Grief is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Welcome to the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm the founder of the Empower Grief Journey coaching and podcast platform. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode brings real conversations with people around the world who have navigated grief and discovered the strength to create new inspired beginnings. Together, we'll walk from grief to empowerment through stories, practical tools, and actionable insights. You'll uncover the hidden gifts within your grief, reclaim your personal power, and step into a future filled with courage and hope. Today, I have an amazing guest with us. Her name is Carrie Brody. She became a grief educator certified through David Kessler's training program in 2023 and received her certification through the Grief Recovery Method Specialist program in 2025. She lost her 9-year-old son, Seth, to sudden unexplained death in childhood in 2018 and has since been on a path of transformation and self-discovery. She also, by the way, published her first book this year, Do You Know the Way, back in March. And that year is her sharing her powerful story of healing and sharing her tools and tips that she learned through her grief journey to help others navigate the uncertain parts of grief. And so, without further ado, Carrie, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Chris. And I'm so happy to be here and be able to share with you and your audience today. It's truly a privilege. And I just hope that my words and our conversation can inspire other people with hope on this very difficult and arduous journey that bereaved parents endure.
Well, I'm really grateful to have you on the show today. And I first off just want to say I'm very, very sorry for the loss of your child. I try to say you and I are part of a club I wish no one would be in, including ourselves, but we found ourselves here. And I do find that there's so much compassion and empathy and love in the lost parent community because it's unfortunately a club that we understand. And
Mhm.
not many people who haven't gone through that really truly understand the pain that that causes in our life when we have our children go before us. It's living life in reverse and not really getting to live the future life we really desired.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, but also so grateful for the people that I've met on this journey. I can't imagine not having the resources that we have that people used to have to do this like alone and not being able to meet people like you that are like across the country and the connection of bereaved parents just it doesn't matter what the circumstances behind it were, we just have an immediate bond and I am so grateful for all the people that I've met on this journey. If I could change it and go back, of course, I would never want to be part of this. But if we do have to, at least we have some people and some support and resources that we can depend upon and lean on each other and provide hope for each other and new people on this journey that they don't have to go at it alone and they can see people that have survived because I know, and I'm sure you felt the same way. I didn't know how to survive this. I did not think I could. I did not think I would. And I say it very honestly in my book and all the time. I didn't know if I wanted to. Like, why would you want to go on without your child? Your be all and end all who your life was wrapped around. It's like, and I always like to say it came from my grief coach, but when you lose a child, it's the end of a dream. That's what it is. All your hopes, dreams, and possibilities, everything that you had planned just shatters instantly. And I know, like me, you didn't have anticipatory grief. You had this excitement of that child, and then bam, like nothing to prepare you. And that's how we were. Yes, my son Seth was 9 years old, totally healthy, happy, thriving in his environment. He had just started fourth grade, and he was doing everything that all normal, healthy children would do. He was thriving in school and had a lot of friends and was involved in a lot of activities and was planning his birthday and his summer plans. You know, kids always like planning for the future. And we had no idea. There was no indication. This is truly SUDC. Not many people have heard of it. Truthfully, I had never heard of it. My husband is a doctor. He had never heard of it. It is the SIDS of older children. There's no rhyme and reason. There's a lot of research that there may be a genetic connection, but there's nothing set in stone. These totally healthy children either go to bed and then wake and they just don't wake up, or 30%, like my Seth, actually wake up, do all their normal activities, and then go into cardiac arrest. And it is devastating. It is terrifying. And it is shocking because here you felt that you did everything in the world to protect your child and prepare and did everything that you're supposed to do, and then they just die. You're like, this is 2018. This isn't colonial America. This isn't the 16th century where you have 12 children and half of them don't survive. This was 2018, and um, but they do. And of course, in my circle now, I think it's common, and there's a lot of people that it happens to. But in the realm of the world, it's very, very rare. SUDC is more common in children under 4, but it is also plaguing more people over the age of 4 now. I see in my group, which I'm really, really active in the SUDC community. I'm a peer one-to-one support for new parents because this is just so devastating. We have another layer because we don't know what happened to our children and we never will.
Yeah, that's what I think is so hard
So,
for people like you and I that
yes, yes,
my son's heart stopped the day before he was supposed to be born, and I
yes,
remember, I wanted to ask you about that moment, for you too, because when you lose your child so suddenly, so fast, and on top
hmm
of that, doctors say we just don't know why. There's no reason, and our brain literally just like blanks out and is like, wait a second here.
yes,
There's got to be a reason. There's got to be an
yes,
explanation. There's got to be something. And when they just tell you there's nothing, and I don't know why this happened, you're really left with just saying, was this my fault? Was this something I did?
of
Was this
course.
something I could have prevented? Your mind just goes down
Mhm.
those roads so fast, and a lot of
Yes.
times, people don't understand that in the lost community, like the way we are.
Mhm.
That always plagues us. What if it was this? What if it was that? Could we have prevented something? And we never get that answer. So we're always stuck in the balance of being in that
Mhm.
mindset a lot. And it's a really hard thing to, I loosely say heal from because I don't think we fully do, but
Mhm.
it's a hard path for us to go forward knowing that there's no answer to what happened.
It is. It is so difficult, and it just adds another layer. Like I have a great example when I was very, very new in grief. I have an older daughter, and maybe 3 months after Seth passed away, she got sick. Like kids get sick, you know. She was 12, she got sick. um, so like we were in the car, and she has a migraine, and she feels like she's gonna throw up, and like you're trying to help your child and you are having a panic attack that they're going to die, like right there and then. And I had a bereaved mom I was talking to, and her son died under totally different circumstances. And she's like, why were you activated by your daughter getting sick? So, like you said, even people in the grief community, if they had a totally different situation, if their child died, that like this person, their child died in a car accident. So, your other child being sick wouldn't activate you at all. But for me, now, if my living child gets sick, I panic that she's going to die. Like, there's just this other layer because common colds can like kill children. That's like what my uh my new
But
paradigm became, and it was so scary. And I'm like, I don't want to live this way. And you can't I don't think you can heal from this kind of loss ever. I'd say I'm on a healing path forever. I'm on a continuous ongoing healing path moving forward and through with Seth. But I will never say that I'm healed because I will always have trauma from it. I will always miss him. I will always have loss, and I'm okay with that. Like, I couldn't have it any other way because I you that's love. That's the love
Yeah,
that you have for your child. Part of this
that's
is that love. And but yeah, having that extra layer, and that's why I try so hard to volunteer my time to help people because, like you said, that guilt, we immediately go, if a professional tells you we have no idea why your loved one passed, immediately you go to me. What did I do? How could I, as a parent, not protect my child and not keep them alive? Um,
so I so I wanted to ask you about that.
yes,
In that moment when Seth passed away and you did talk to doctors, did you guys do or want to do an autopsy to try to figure out what was going on with that, or did you guys accept what the doctors told
yes,
you? I know you said your husband's a doctor, by the way, so
yes.
I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about,
Sure. No, I
how did
am
you guys
totally
navigate
thank you for
that
asking because
loss?
a lot of people are like afraid to go there or they don't want to ask that question. So thank you so much for bringing it out in the open and being so honest and forthright. Yes, we did. We did do an autopsy because you don't believe that. Like, how could they go from like playing and laughing and enjoying breakfast to like 6 hours later dying of cardiac arrest in an ambulance, and not even being able to get to the hospital. And it happening so quickly with no real signs. Like he didn't seem sick. So, of course, you're in disbelief and you're like, there had to be something underlying. There had to be an undiagnosed heart defect or brain trauma or something. You're so shocked and dumbfounded and you're just left. And we don't like not to have answers. We don't like the unknown. That's a really uncomfortable feeling. So we did. And the entire medical examiner report after the autopsy came back unknown, 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 unknown in every single category. um, and then they have to put a diagnosis on a medical examiner's report. So they put myocarditis because he did have an infection in his heart, but that probably is what caused the cardiac arrest. But he didn't have any infection, so it's like what caused it. Everything came back unknown. There was no COVID then because, of course, people would say, oh, he had COVID, right? And
Yeah.
I've noticed that with a lot of the parents that I help now, they immediately think their child had COVID, especially the people I was helping in 20 and 21. Um, but, he didn't have flu, he didn't have strep, he didn't have any undiagnosed disease, and he wasn't acting sick at all. Like if he did, he would have acted really sick. You would have taken him to the hospital, and maybe you would have known. But that's the thing with all the SUDC children; they have no symptoms ahead of time, and it's fast. It's super
That
fast. It's either overnight. There have been some studies recently for the younger subset, and they've looked at because their parents still had a baby monitor on, maybe they were 2 or 3, so they still had a baby monitor in their room, and they could actually see how quickly they passed in their sleep.
wow,
So no
that
suffering. They didn't suffer. It happened so quickly, and they weren't sick ahead of time.
so
Um,
I I wanted to ask you another question
yes,
about sudden, because I've heard of SIDS before. I've talked to
yes,
people who have lost their infants to sudden death,
sure.
and that breaks my heart in a lot of ways. I
Hmm.
dealt with that, day one of things. I can't imagine what that's like, what you went through, and having a child that you've gotten years to spend with. But
Yes,
as far as the sudden death syndrome that happened with your son. Is it different from SIDS, like medically defined different? And is there, I wanted to ask another question too
yes.
on top of that, just how common it is. Because like I found out with stillbirth, for example, I thought it was a one-off rare thing, but 120,000 infants a year in the United States are born stillborn. And so it
Wow.
is something that I feel, particularly with your scenario too. I wonder if it's not is talked about, but it's happening more often than
Yes.
we aren't discussing it enough.
Definitely. And March is SUDC Awareness Month. And every one of our members, we all put out so much information there because maybe if there was more awareness, there could be some way to prevent it. But without there being any symptoms, it's so difficult. Our son happened to be adopted, but there are people who now, because there may be a genetic component, they get themselves and their children tested. But as far as it's not the same as SIDS, but it goes through a lot of the same similarities. Since 70% of the children, it does happen while they're sleeping, but it's not due to suffocation or anything like that, which they think has to do with SIDS. But they do, so it's just very sudden, and we don't know. We don't know, but it is considered the SIDS of older children. That there is something in their body that is laying dormant, probably, and then it just
Mm.
manifests, and it manifests so quickly. So just like SIDS, it's kind of a really unknown, and that's why they call it, unknown death in childhood. And just SUDC is considered you're over 12 months up to age 18.
Oh,
Where
okay.
SIDS
That's what
you're
I was
under,
curious about.
yeah, where SIDS you're under 12 months. And
So
they say one in four, it happens to 1 in 400 children under 4.
that still seems like it happens more frequently than we talk about
Yes,
or know about for that reason.
yeah. And then as
I,
you go up in age, it's rarer, and it's more common in boys.
So I wanted to ask you a big question that happens in the grief community because this is something not very well talked about, but I talk about it a lot on my show where spouses go through this kind of loss with child loss very differently sometimes. And I try to draw attention to the fact that your husband or your wife may grieve differently than you. Some people are very internal grievers, some people are external
Mhm.
grievers. I happen to be one of those external grievers. I wanted to ask you, how did you and your husband navigate this loss together? And did it, the reason I bring this up is when I
Mm.
went to a loss event after losing my son, I had no idea how many people got divorced through child loss. I had no idea. And it honestly scared me because when we lost my child, my wife and I got closer together. It didn't pull us apart. And I saw a lot of people that either really came together or fell apart. And so I wanted to ask you about your situation as you guys went through that healing journey. What was that like for you and your husband, and how did you guys support each other through that moment?
Oh, I'm so glad that you addressed that because, yeah, a lot of people find that the elephant in the room. Another thing they don't want to ask bereaved parents. And yes, we do grieve very differently. Men and women grieve very differently. Um, and my husband's career made him grieve differently. He was the person that went in the ambulance with Seth, being the medical professional. So his post traumatic stress disorder was therefore so much larger than mine. He lost his career because of it. He was an ER doctor at the time. He could not go back to working in the ER. He could not work with children. So we had so much to deal with. But like you and your wife, I feel now it's brought us to a new level to live through something like that together. And you have to respect each other and give each other their space and let each person grieve the way they grieve and not be judgmental, not force them to do it the way that you do it. My husband being very scientific, he wanted a scientific reason and healing, where I went to the spiritual side, which was
Mm.
so foreign to him, to consult with mediums or to believe that you see signs, which I believe very strongly. And he is so analytical and practical. And that actually brought him more pain. So what was bringing me peace was bringing him pain. so we couldn't talk about certain things at first. Um, but then we just knew that you don't have to say anything, just being present with the person. And after the very beginning, we had our what we call like grief bursts at different times.
Mm.
So I was hysterical crying, and he was in a better place. And then he was a mess, and I was okay in that moment. So we just held each other and just witnessed and present without judgment. That's the biggest thing, Chris. Like, not to judge anyone else's grief. Everybody grieves in their own way. And
That's
we
that's what
had
I think is
things,
hard. That's what
yeah,
I think is
so
hard
hard.
about grief is that, my when my wife and I went through it, there were days that she was very, very emotional and very
Mm-hmm.
that anger comes out hot when you go through a child loss. And
Mm-hmm.
I had that same thing happen. There were days that you feel completely fine and normal, and the next day, oh my God, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
wave just like hits you, and
Yes.
you just feel like you can't go out in the world. You're like, don't talk to me today, don't be around me today. And those are things too. I'm only 3 years into my journey, very short like you, and I still tell people that phrase you brought up. I'm not ever fully healed because I still
Mm-hmm.
have those days, and I don't plan for them. And I feel like when we go through a grief loss, just like losing a child, there's going to be days we just have to learn how to navigate through that together. And I think it's a big test on a marriage, to be very honest. It's a very big test because we have to learn how to accept each other healing at different rates and different
Mm-hmm.
modalities, different ways we heal. And I also, by the way, think it can definitely bring you together in a very powerful way if you leave yourself open to that, holding space for that partner of yours and understanding how they're going through grief, what their perspective is, what their mindset is, helping them find ways through it. I think there's just so much to be learned in that healing process. And that's why I always say that healing is a destination, or not a destination, it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be over. It's never going to be like you achieved it and you're fine. Because we're emotional beings as humans. We don't get over things. We don't let go of things as much as society tells us that. I wanted to ask you that question about spirituality because I dove very, very big into that after losing my kid because everything else just wasn't working.
Oh,
Had you been a very spiritual person in your life, and did that, if that was the case, did this
mhm.
build upon that after you lost Seth, and what was that like for you walking that journey?
Yes. I was. I always said I'm a more spiritual person than religious and a very faithful person. And my mom was like that also. And my mom passed to the spirit world young. So I had a spiritual connection with her. But it's different when it's your child. And I was always able to connect with her on my own, but my grief was so heavy. And also, my grief with her was anticipatory grief, so I could prepare for it. But since it was shocking with Seth, I felt that my spiritual connection was cut off almost because my grief was so strong in my shock. Um, but I knew also, like you, that that was the only thing that was going to help me survive this, knowing that he's still with me, that he's in my heart, that our souls are connected, that we can communicate, that there's more than just this life on earth, and that this is very temporary, and that that I'll see him again, that we're going to be reunited because we're soul family, we're connected, and we're we're bonded. And then I did go to a medium like 3 weeks out because I just needed to know he was okay, and I wasn't unable to connect with him. And I got beautiful validations. I went in person at that time, and it was before COVID, and it was just wonderful. And then as I worked on my own grief and got that under control, it opened up my channels more and more to be able to connect with him. So it was a motivation to work really, really hard with my therapist and on my grief recovery method and all of the things that I needed to do to clear my grief so I could have an open channel to connect with my son. So it has been like such a blessing. And the book, I feel we wrote it together. We channeled. I got messages from him and downloads, and I would have never written a book without him, without his inspiration and his motivation. And everything I do for him. You know, nobody gets into this work because when you were a little child, you said, "Oh, I want to be a grief coach." Life finds us in this profession and this will and this longing to just help people and to reach out and to show compassion and love and openness and have open discussions like this about it in this grief illiterate society, and just be there for people so they're not alone. You're driven to do that. It's And I feel that it comes from Seth, it comes from your son. That's why we do this. And so that spiritual connection is so important for everything I do and how I serve and how I um how I am in the world. I'm really different in the world now than I used to be. I always showed gratitude, and I believed in like the meant to be, and that things happened for reasons outside what we could think about in our rational mind. But then it became so much more prominent and important, and like gave me purpose and meaning, to have kind of one foot here on earth and one foot or one ear listening to what Seth is saying from across the veil.
So what kind of messages did you hear from him when you went to a medium reading? Because I recently did that this year, and it was very powerful, very emotional situation. But
Oh,
are
it
there any
is.
messages you could share with us that you got through the mediumship?
Oh my gosh, I've gotten so many beautiful messages and a lot of signs, because because he was young, he kind of likes to make things a game. So like he'll tell me, or like through a medium, we'll go somewhere and he'll tell me like what to look for, and it seems like things that are like really outlandish. But as far as things that I wouldn't have done, like I gave every excuse in the world not to take David Kessler's class and become a grief educator. So that like things like that, like he was like, "You're going to do this," and that came through a medium like years ahead of time, and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I would never like put myself out there and do this." Um, and then when it came up, it like popped up on the screen. I get a lot of things through technology, and like like when you like touch the mouse and like you don't feel like you're the one moving it. So it's things like that, and like the writing the book. I said I would never write a book. I love to write and journaled a lot, but I said I'd never make myself vulnerable and share my most sacred feelings and put that out there. And that message that came through a medium like 2 years prior, and then it wouldn't stop like banging in my head. I'm sure you've had that, Chris. Like, the first time is like a poke, and the second time is a push, and then it's like, and then it's like an avalanche, then it's like an anvil is falling on your head. And, in the most in a time that you wouldn't even think of, then you're like sitting down and you're like writing a book, and you're like texting people that have written books to get a publisher, and you don't even know where this is coming from. And you're like, this isn't me. I'm not typing. I'm not doing this. So things like that. And that came like in advance, like when I wasn't even ready in my mind to do it, that came through to do it. And like we go away every year on his anniversary, which is coming up next month. And one time this was amazing. Like the day before we left, I had a medium reading because it was right by his anniversary. And the medium told me, wherever you're going to see like paintings or murals. She wasn't even sure. And they're going to be very large, and look very closely at them because they're going to have messages for you from Seth. And we happen to be in Tucson, Arizona. a place I would never ever think that you would see murals painted on the side of a building. We go on like a art, architectural, culinary kind of tour of the city, and the tour guide brings us to this like city block, and it's all murals painted on the buildings that were done by artists during COVID, like to send out messages of hope and love and togetherness. And every one of them was hearts, hands like this, and hands like this. And they all said hope, connection, love, peace, community. So I was like blown away. So
That's incredible. That's such a beautiful
yeah,
gift that came out of that mediumship reading.
yes, yes. And you're like, there's no doubt. Like there is no doubt. Like that was Seth. This person was in the UK, so I knows nothing about our country, where we were going, and what would be on the wall. So to me, there's no other explanation, and there are no coincidences.
I fully believe that there are no coincidences in this world. Things do happen with intention and
Mhm,
purpose, and they're not always bad, by the way. They're always good to push you a certain
mhm.
direction or show you something that you need to
Yes.
see. Um, Carrie, I wanted to ask you, top of that, when did you decide to become certified as a grief educator? 'Cause I saw you went through David Kessler's program and went through the grief recovery method. I got a lot of friends in that community. What led you
Uh-huh.
down that path?
Um, I guess I was looking for some way to channel all this new knowledge that I had, and what I knew, and how could I share it in a more formal, beautiful way? Because of course I helped a lot of people by volunteering and just helping friends, and people refer people to you. And I said, well, how can I kind of make this more like formal? So, you get that imposter syndrome, like this isn't my background. I taught preschool before this. So how am I going to have people like trust me, and that I can do it in a more formal, beautiful way, bringing people together in grief groups where they have a safe, sacred community. So I was told by a medium that I was going to do it, and then I was kept getting told by Seth, and then they came up, and I always really liked David Kessler. He resonated with me, and I liked that his program was grief educator because I was a teacher, and um, I like that you're educating people and informing them and bringing them together in like a beautiful way. So I just wanted like a little more of a credential under my belt, but it was actually such a beautiful healing experience for me. um, I learned so much about myself, and um, and about grieving and different types of grief, and people that weren't only bereaved parents, because his program is open to all. And so much of his experience started in hospice, which I didn't know. So
Hmm.
I learned a lot about that also, and about the death and dying process. So kind of demystified that and made it not so scary and not so taboo, because you're only familiar with your own, um, which is sometimes traumatizing and sometimes not what you maybe want to discuss with people. So he just like brought it all together in such a beautiful way, and just to see different people's perspectives. And then so I did that, and I loved it, and it's a very beautiful and healing community. But then I was seeing that some of my clients wanted something a little more less open-ended. And if you're familiar with the grief recovery method, it kind of takes you through steps, and you have like a start and an end, not to your healing, but to this process, because some people prefer that to having like open-ended type of therapy or coaching that can go on and on. And I had done it because I was referred to it, and I had done it very early on. And but then I was thinking that that could add to something that I could offer people in grief if they were interested in something like that. And sometimes it helps when you're further on. I did it very early, but now that I've redone it at this stage of grief, you get a kind of a different perspective and further healing. So it was just something else that I wanted to be able to offer people and that might be looking for something a little bit different. And again, it's not just for bereaved parents. It can be used for all types of grief, not only grief from death, also. So people use it for divorce, they use it for breakups, they use it for job losses, any like big changes in your life. So then I could help people even further and serve the community even more, having two very different types of perspectives.
I really love that because I think that grief takes so many different forms and
Mhm.
it's not always associated with death and loss, by the way. It can be grieving somebody in a relationship that's no longer wanting to be with you. It could be estrangement
Mhm.
from family or friends. It could
Mhm.
be losing a job or losing a home. There's grief infiltrates our
Mhm.
life in many different ways, and I always like to say that it doesn't discriminate either. It doesn't care who you are. It's gonna reach you at some point, and to make it accessible for us to learn how to move through that through these certain
Mhm.
programs. And I love that you went through those certifications to be a better service to your clients because that's what I try to do as well on the journey that I'm
Mhm.
on right now is I'm always trying to look for that way to meet people where they are, meet people where the grief journey is at for them, and making them feel like there's not just one said way to do this, which is why I have this podcast, by the way, is,
Mhm.
115 people into my show, I've learned that grief, everybody's got their own journey, their own healing
Mhm.
modalities, the things that work for them. And it may not resonate with everybody, but it will resonate with certain people. And it's going to give that
Yeah.
small group of people a way to say, oh, this is the way that I got to heal, and this is how I can start my journey and discover which direction
Mhm.
I need to go. Um, Carrie, as we start wrapping up the podcast, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you about writing your book because it sounds like your son was very much a part of that with you spiritually as you wrote that book. How
Yes.
did you get to that place, by the way, of wanting to write the book? And tell us a little bit about what you wrote inside it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Um, yes, I was told years before I even put pen to paper, as they say, that I was going to write a book from the very beginning. And like we always do, we say, no, 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 I'm not. So then it just kept coming up more and more. And I'm like, I really want to share my story and get it out there. Like you said, you never know what tool or what's going to resonate with people and what's going to touch them. And some people like just to go to Amazon and get lots of books and read, read, read. Um, I know for me, I lost my ability to read in the beginning of my of grief. I couldn't read anymore, but I could only read certain things, and I could read stories of people's grief journeys because they really helped me. So I just got the confidence through Seth and some very good friends and some mediums telling me to go for it. And it was Valentine's Day, which is a hard day because we always made a big deal of Valentine's Day with our children. I made them little heart notes and I put it on their door, and we had special treats, and I was sitting on my meditation cushion, and he basically told me, "You're going to write this book. You're going to write it now, and you're going to start right now." And I just got this huge like download of information, and I just went and like got right up from my meditation cushion and just started typing, 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 typing. And my fingers were moving so fast, I didn't even know what I was writing or saying. And he told me the name of the book, because I had no idea what I was going to call it, or like if it was even going to come to fruition. And he told me, you have to call it "Do You Know the Way?" So
Mm.
I splashed back to 2018. uh, Seth was a huge meme junkie with his friends. A lot of his friends were a little bit older than him, and he was a tech guru. So there was a very popular meme with this little red character that used to say, "Do you know the way?" And he would like
Mm.
repeat it, and it was like in this funny little voice. And whenever I told him something he didn't want to hear, didn't let him do what he wanted to do, he told me, "Mom, you don't know the way. You do not know the way," he would say. So, so, um, so he said, it has to be, do you know the way? And that just resonated so much because in my eulogy to him at his funeral, the last line that I said was, you always ask me, Mom, do you know the way? And I said, I don't know the way to navigate this life without you. So
Mm.
it was just the perfect synchronicity because I didn't think of that. I had totally forgotten that because, in that point, you're numb. So I didn't even remember that. And then when he said that in my head, in my ear, um, I was like, oh, wow. Boy, does that resonate. And an interesting story, one of my dear friends is the mom of his best friend, and I gave her a copy of the book, and it was laying on the counter. And his best friend said to his mom, "That's the name of Harry's book. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that meant to Seth?" And so then that it resonated with his friend, who's now almost 18, um, that just like warmed my heart so much, and I knew why I wrote the book. And uh, then I gave her son a copy of the book, and he read it, and it helped his healing because his friends are still really, really shaken by the death of a friend almost 7 years later.
I think that's such a beautiful gift that Seth helped you curate and get out into the
Yeah.
world. I think that's a beautiful way also to honor him and keep his legacy
Mhm.
alive. So I applaud you for having the strength to write that book. And I just want to ask you too, by the way, where can we find this book? Is it on Amazon or?
It is. It is. It's Do You Know the Way? I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there we go. It's Do You Know the Way? And it's on Amazon by Carrie Brody. And Seth designed the cover also. So,
I love
so you
that.
can find it there. And it would be such an honor, anybody that wants to read it. And I hope it resonates and it helps you. It is a book about my journey, but it's really a book about love. Um, I give some little tidbits in like a fun way, but it's really a book about life and a book about love, the love between a parent and a child.
I think that's really beautiful, Carrie. Well, I'll get the link from you and put that in the show notes for
Yes,
listeners so they can check that out
thank
after they
you.
get done listening to the podcast. Um,
Wonderful.
Carrie, I just want to say, real big honor to meet you today and have this conversation with you. From one lost parent to another, my heart goes out to you, but I'm also very grateful that you and I had the opportunity to connect and also continue Seth's legacy forward through this podcast. I think that's a beautiful moment. But I just want to say that I wish you all the best going forward on your grief work that you're doing and helping others in this community because, as you said, grief is very illiterate in our society today. It still is. And a lot of people don't know how to navigate that. They don't know how to process it or hold space for people. So I continue doing the amazing work that you're doing because it is most likely impacting more people than you know. And I'm just really looking forward to staying in touch with you. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Chris, and same right back at you. So grateful and thrilled that we got to meet and that we got to connect. And I know our boys brought us together. And thank you so much from my heart to yours.
Well, for listeners listening today, I will have all of Carrie's social media, website, and link to her book on Amazon for you guys. So check out the show notes when you get done listening to this episode. Reach out and connect with her. She's a beautiful human being, as you've witnessed on the podcast today, and she's doing some very powerful work. And something that I want to say as a lost parent, just because we lost our children doesn't mean it's the end of our story, but it's actually a new beginning of things. And this is where our children that pass on give Carrie and I a gift and many other lost parents to go out in the world and do something very beautiful to honor the legacy and the life of our children, even though they're not here walking with us on the planet physically. So, just a big hot shout out to the lost parents out there. I want you guys to stay strong, maintain your faith, and I want you to have hope that there is a new future for you and the forward motion of things. But it's an honor and remembrance of your child, and They're little children, by the way. They're up in the universe guiding us from above. They put us on paths we don't fully understand or figure out, but they do guide us down that journey, and we eventually start figuring that out. So, this big thank you for you guys listening today. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining Carrie and I on today's episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Carrie's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on Apple and Podbean. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want you to know you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.